Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a foundational pillar of global finance, the US dollar. It's potentially on the brink of what some are calling a neck-snapping shift. For decades, it's been this, unwavering bedrock for global transactions. But now, it's facing unprecedented scrutiny. So today, we're diving deep into the very real possibility that a new Trump administration might, well, actively try to devalue the dollar and what that could truly mean for global markets, especially with that staggering $37 trillion U.S. national debt looming over everything. We pulled together a pretty extensive stack of sources for this deep dive. We've got insights from financial titans like the Financial Times, the Washington Post, detailed analyses from major investment banks, J.P. Morgan, ING, State Street, and it's all enriched with insights from seasoned currency experts like Brad Bechtel of Jefferies. Our mission really is to cut through the noise, all these conflicting predictions. We want to understand the why and the how of potential dollar depreciation. And maybe most importantly, drill down into what these shifts could actually mean for you, your investments, your purchasing power, maybe even your daily life.
Yeah, and what's really intriguing here is that this isn't just about, abstract currency exchange rates or even just the value of a dollar in your pocket when you travel abroad. We're looking at a potential structural challenge, something that could redefine global trade. It could even accelerate the rise of alternative assets, think cryptocurrencies, gold,
Right.
and maybe significantly reshape the American job market too. This whole situation really pushes us to think critically, doesn't it? How do we weigh these diverse viewpoints? How do we understand the bigger picture of what a shift like this would truly entail? It's really about discerning the signal from all the static.
Absolutely. And to really get a handle on where we might be headed, we probably need to quickly glance back. The dollar's recent journey has been, well, pretty wild. Quite the roller coaster. Think back to Trump's previous inauguration. The dollar initially soared, right, near record highs, levels we hadn't seen in, over 2 decades.
Right.
And this surge was fueled by strong economic growth, high interest rates,
Right.
and that thing investors call the Trump trade. This belief that even potential trade wars would make the dollar a safe haven. But here's where it gets really interesting, or maybe perplexing. After such a strong start, how have we seen this sort of bearish outlook start to creep in? I mean, the dollar spot index, the DXY, it's been hovering around 106 recently. That's down from over 109 afters of tech on Inauguration Day. It even hit a year-to-date low not long ago, despite being at a 20-year high back in January. What shifted?
Well, the underlying dynamic, I think, is that investor sentiment isn't always strictly rational, is it? The shift really stemmed from growing concerns, worries that maybe Trump's tariffs wouldn't be as severe or maybe as effective as first thought, or perhaps that a more scattergun approach to trade policy could just create too much economic uncertainty. It's like trying to solve a puzzle where the pieces keep changing shape. J.P. Morgan, for instance, they noted this curious paradox. Despite policies like tariffs, which, typically boost the dollar, they saw limited room for it to go much higher. They actually predicted a downturn.
Really? Even with tariffs?
Exactly. It suggests investors were seeing the currency stay strong in the moment, but maybe had deeper doubts building underneath. Doubts about the long-term economic strategy, the stability of the path forward. It seemed less about the immediate strength and more about that perceived stability.
Okay, so even with tariffs usually strengthening a currency because imports get more expensive, investors were still, wary. That brings us right to President Trump's stance on the dollar. It's been remarkably consistent over the years, hasn't it?
It really has.
He's repeatedly argued that a strong dollar, well, it makes American exports less competitive.
Yeah.
Leads to those big trade deficits, loss of manufacturing jobs here in the U.S. Now, for a long time, this was largely, brushed off to just talk, a political talking point. But analysts are now seeing what they call an unappreciated chance. He might actually take active steps, concrete steps to devalue the dollar if he gets the chance.
Yeah.
The Financial Times even warned of a potential neck-snapping shift in the financial system. They pointed out his previous term was characterized by lightning speed and radical action in other areas.
That's foreign policy, yeah.
Exactly. Upending foreign policy orthodoxy or cutting government spending. They suggest these moves signal he might be bold enough to do the same with the foundations of the financial system. Why is this view, previously dismissed as just rhetoric, suddenly carrying so much weight?
Well, the key reason I think that these long-held views are being taken so seriously now, it boils down to the strategic discussions, the ones reported during the 2024 election cycle. It became pretty clear this wasn't just a casual opinion anymore. It was an active policy consideration within the Trump team.
Right.
And it's not just the former president himself. We've seen prominent figures advocating for this. Like Vice President J.D. Vance, he's been a longtime advocate for dollar depreciation, arguing it would help bring manufacturing jobs back to the U.S.
He said that explicitly.
Yes, he explicitly stated, devaluing is of course a scary word, but what it really means is American exports become cheaper. That signals pretty strong political alignment, real momentum behind the idea. It moves it from just abstract economic theory into, well, potential government action.
Okay, so we have President Trump's longstanding belief, reinforced by figures like J.D. Vance, a weaker dollar helps manufacturing.
Mm,
But, within any administration, especially one with such strong views, there are always internal debates, different perspectives.
always.
We've seen this play out quite clearly with the Treasury Secretary position. Scott Bessent, the current Treasury Secretary, he's publicly said he sees a strong dollar as important to maintaining its reserve currency status. He's reiterated a strong dollar policy.
Which is the traditional Treasury line.
Exactly. And that contrasts sharply with Robert Lighthizer, who is reportedly considered for the role. Lighthizer is a longtime advocate of devaluation.
The very different viewpoint.
So despite Bessent's public statements reaffirming a strong dollar, some analysts are questioning the tenability of this position. Is it really sustainable for a Treasury Secretary to champion a strong dollar when the president holds such a firm opposing view?
Well, the deeper insight here, perhaps, is that even a strong dollar advocate like Bessent might be strategically open to controlled depreciation, just maybe not through overt aggressive intervention.
Ah, okay.
Brad Bechtel, the global head of FX at Jefferies, he offered a really intriguing take on this. He suggested that Bessent is minded toward currency adjustments rather than tariffs to rebalance trade.
Adjustments, not tariffs. Interesting.
Yes, and he explained that to actually accomplish this, Bessent would need the Fed's help. He'd need them to lower U.S. real interest rates, which in turn would require more cuts from the Federal Reserve.
So relying on the Fed.
Exactly. This kind of subtle approach, it highlights the complexity of the internal thinking. It suggests a potential desire to achieve similar goals, like boosting exports, but through a different channel. A less confrontational monetary policy channel, perhaps.
That's a really crucial distinction. So if Bessent's vision needs the independent Fed to cut rates,
Yeah.
how realistic is that? Can we really expect them to comply with that kind of political pressure? Especially given their recent history, holding rates firm despite presidential calls for cuts.
It's a huge question mark.
Okay, let's unpack this then. If President Trump does want to go about devaluing the dollar, how could it actually happen? Given the Fed's independence, it's certainly not an easy task, right?
Definitely not straightforward.
Direct orders might not work.
Yeah.
But there seem to be indirect avenues. One is through inflation control. Now, while some of the president's proposed policies are seen as inflationary, his program also includes things like drastic cuts to government spending, planned expansions in energy output.
Counterbalances, yeah.
Right. If those actually bring inflation down, then the Fed might be more inclined, just based on its own mandate, to reduce interest rates, which would naturally put downward pressure on the dollar.
That's one possibility.
Another mechanism is through the Treasury itself, Treasury intervention. The Treasury Department could use its Exchange Stabilization Fund, the ESF,
The ESF.
to buy massive quantities of foreign currency. Imagine the Treasury selling billions of dollars to purchase euros or yen.
Increasing the dollar supply globally.
Exactly. Increasing the supply, reducing its value. And this effect could be amplified through coordinated interventions with foreign central banks, though that requires cooperation, which might be tricky.
Very tricky these days.
And then finally, there's the pressure angle. The president could exert maximum pressure on the Fed. The Financial Times suggested that after Chairman Jay Powell's term expires in 2026, the president could potentially look to pack the Fed with like-minded allies, people more willing to cut rates.
That's the longer game strategy.
A longer game, yeah, but potentially a powerful one.
Stepping back for a second, this whole idea of a coordinated currency adjustment, it's not entirely unprecedented,
Right, there are historical examples.
Yeah, we can look back at the 1985 Plaza Accord. That's often cited as a potential model. This was an agreement where the U.S. agreed to devalue the dollar against major currencies: the French franc, the Deutschmark, the Japanese yen, the British pound.
Why did they do that then?
Well, the American Treasury Secretary at the time used it to resist pressure for tariffs and to address growing trade deficits caused by a very strong dollar back then. Robert Zoellick, former World Bank president, he's even argued that a measured and controlled depreciation could be preferable to erecting new trade barriers.
Interesting perspective.
Now, economists still debate the direct impact of the Plaza Accord. It's complex. The dollar did decline significantly, about 50% against the Deutschmark yen. And the U.S. current account deficit did improve. It also reportedly eased protectionist fever, boosting growth, jobs, wages.
It sounds like a success.
Well, yes and no. It wasn't without its complexities. Japan, for instance. Some argue the rapid appreciation of the yen partly contributed to the start of its lost decades.
Unintended consequences.
Exactly. So while it offers a kind of blueprint, conditions today are very different. A straight repeat would be difficult, especially with major trading partners like China facing sluggish growth themselves. They're unlikely to agree to raise their interest rates to help the U.S. devalue. The whole global economic landscape has fundamentally shifted since the 80s.
That historical parallel is compelling, but yeah, your point about Japan's experience really highlights the potential for unintended consequences. And speaking of things that could dramatically shift the landscape, our sources also dug up something rather, well, wild. A speculative element connected to the huge U.S. debt.
Yes, the crypto theory.
Right, the $37 trillion U.S. debt sparks wild crypto and gold reset theory.
The soaring crypto market obviously plays into this narrative. We've seen combined crypto prices rocket, $4 trillion market cap?
Something like that, yeah. Bitcoin copped $124,000 recently. Those predictions out there are just astronomical, like $2 million.
Wild predictions.
And here's where it gets truly remarkable, or maybe just bizarre. A top advisor to Russia's President Vladimir Putin reportedly suggested the U.S., under President Trump, wants to use crypto to erase its massive debt at the world's expense and basically reset the financial system in its favor.
Yeah.
It sounds like something straight out of a geopolitical thriller novel, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And look, while the mechanics of how that would actually work might seem far-fetched, it speaks to the underlying desperation, maybe, that some feel about this massive debt burden.
Yeah.
The intriguing point here is how this theory, as presented in the source, connects some very big dots. You've got the unprecedented U.S. debt level, the rise of these alternative decentralized assets like crypto and gold, and high-stakes geopolitical maneuvering all mixed together. History shows us that times of great financial stress often breed these kinds of dramatic narratives, sometimes fantastical narratives about how the system might be reset. It highlights the kind of, let's say, creative thinking or perhaps wishful thinking that can emerge when a financial system faces such immense pressure, especially when you have a globally dominant currency whose future suddenly feels uncertain.
Okay, so bringing it back down to earth a bit, back to the near-term outlook for you, the listener. Where exactly is the dollar heading in 2025? It feels like the main takeaway is still uncertainty.
Shrouded in uncertainty was the phrase used, yeah.
Right. And this uncertainty itself is a powerful market force. While many forecasters were pretty bullish on the dollar leading up to the election, those jitters have definitely crept in. That, coupled with this unease over the potential for Trump to actively seek depreciation, is why we're seeing such conflicting forecasts.
Yeah.
Which just goes to show how complex and dynamic this moment really is.
Absolutely. The forecasts are all over the place.
ING, for example, told investors back in February they saw no reason for a weaker dollar. They predicted a DXY low of 106 in Q1. They even suggest that announcing reciprocal tariffs will likely lead to a more substantial battle over trade in Q2, which could actually bode well for the dollar as investors seek safety.
The safe haven argument again.
Exactly. But then on the flip side, you have State Street. They predicted a sell-off in February and March, their broader outlook. A 10–15% decline over the next 2 years.
A significant drop.
And JP Morgan also chimed in, stating the dollar has limited room for further appreciation. They think a downturn is likely at some point, even if the timing is unclear. A lot seems to ride on that April 1st, 2025 directive for U.S. trade agencies, formulating reciprocal tariffs.
And crucially, how trading partners respond.
Right. This divergence in predictions, it's less about who's right and more about just. The conflicting signals coming from policy intentions versus market fundamentals.
Which then leads us to a really critical question. Could there be a diplomatic angle here? Something that could de-escalate some of this tension, maybe even preempt it?
Like deals being cut beforehand.
Potentially. Early reports indicate possible agreements with trading partners ahead of any reciprocal tariffs. For instance, the EU is reportedly planning to reduce its tariffs on American cars from 10% down to 2.5%.
That would be significant.
Very. If deals like that can be replicated, with other major trading partners across different goods and services, it would have huge ramifications. If a consensus can be reached, the threat of a trade war could be defanged, which, ironically, could weaken the dollar as a result, less need for that safe haven status.
Interesting twist.
It just shows that intricate dance between policy, trade negotiations, and currency valuation. These diplomatic maneuvers could soften the impact, but they also just underscore how interconnected global economies really are.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what does all this mean for you, the listener, trying to navigate this? The dollar is clearly at a crossroads,
Oh.
caught between its history of remarkable strength, a presidential desire for depreciation to boost American exports,
Hmm.
and this complex web of global economic forces, diplomatic negotiations, everything we've talked about.
Still a lot to juggle.
It really is.
Oh.
And whether the dollar ultimately stays strong or weakens through deliberate policy or gets influenced by unforeseen shifts, the implications are vast. For your investments, this crossroads probably means paying closer attention to currency hedging, maybe global market diversification. For your travel plans, well, a weaker dollar could stretch your vacation budget abroad. A stronger one makes those trips pricier. Pretty straightforward there. And for your everyday life, maybe watch how these shifts impact import prices. On everything from electronics to your morning coffee, it feels like the era of just taking the dollar's stability for granted might be, well, drawing to a close.
And the broader implication here, I think, is just how the pursuit of national economic interests, whether it's through tariffs or currency adjustments, inevitably ripples through the entire global financial system. We've seen historical precedents like the Plaza Accord. We're seeing new, maybe wild speculative theories emerge as these tensions rise. The ultimate question then becomes, how much genuine control can any single administration truly exert over a currency as globally dominant as the dollar? And maybe more importantly, what might be the long-term, perhaps unintended consequences of such bold actions on the very foundations of the world economy? It's a fundamental question of power, influence, and the delicate balance of the global financial order we live in.